Coming to the next one, I would like to call Prateek Pashine, President, Enterprise Business Geo, sharing his keynote on Enterprises of Tomorrow in conversation with Gajendra Upadhyay, Editor, Voice and Data. Prateek Pashine is President Enterprise with Reliance Jio, a part of the $100 billion Reliance Industries Group. Mr. Pashine spent over 2 decades with the Tata Group in the Tata Administrative Service, started in 1995, and has worked in diverse industries such as hospitality, software, real estate, and telecom equipment and services. Prior to joining Reliance Jio in the late 2018, he has worked with several companies, namely Tata Teleservices, Tata Communications, Taj Group of Hotels, Speech and Software Technologies, Tata Lucent Technologies, and Tata Industries. Over to you, Gajendra, for this session.
Good afternoon to all, and welcome to this session. Today, we are going to talk about enterprises of tomorrow. We have with us somebody who understands enterprises like very few other people would know in the telecom sector. Prateek Pashine, who is currently the President Enterprise with Reliance Jio for the last 4 years. Prateek is a Fulbright scholar and has attended the Carnegie Mellon Leadership in Management course. Before that, he has spent almost 20 years with the Tata Group in various capacities at senior leadership, including Tata Teleservices and other telecom platforms like Tata Communications. Prateek has also been the chairman of the Wireless Broadband Alliance, a global organization where a lot of telecom operators are members. He was on the board of the WiMAX Forum. WiMAX is the global standard for fixed wireless broadband. And interestingly, Prateek is also an adventure sports enthusiast who is a squash player and an avid cyclist. Welcome, Prateek, with us this afternoon, and thanks for sparing your time.
Thanks, Gajendra, and thanks for inviting me. This is an excellent topic. I think very topical at that as enterprises reopen and create strategies, action plan for how they're going to behave, work, operate for the next decade or so. So I think this is a very, very relevant topic in terms of what challenges and opportunities that enterprises will have in the new decade.
Sure. So Prateek, I'll start off with, we have all been through these last 2 years of an exceptional, what do you call, a black swan event called the pandemic. And this has really changed lives for both the corporate and individuals in multiple ways. How would you, share your thoughts on what this has done to the enterprise over the last 2 years, and what you have seen personally out of your 4 years in Geo? 2 years have been literally working from home kind of scenario.
I think to start with, this has truly tested the human spirit. It has challenged humans to think out of box and create solutions for continuity of business. And I think I'll start with that first. Every corporate would have what they called as a BCP, a business continuity plan. And before COVID, that pretty much meant 2 things. You almost did a lip service to that, if you will. What it meant was, one, in terms of your data centers and core data being bagged up in a disaster recovery location. That was one meaning of BCP or one idea of BCP. And the other that some corporates followed was to say, 2 leaders or 3 senior leaders will not travel together on the same plane. And that's where the BCP started and ended. COVID's actually told us how inadequate that BCP was, right? Because it wasn't any longer about the CEO or CFO. But if your employees cannot come to work, if your employees cannot be connected to the resources or the infrastructure that the company provides, that was a BCP issue. And I think that's become truly broad-based. It is no longer about flying on the same plane, but it is about saying, how do I make sure that my factories, be it factories producing goods or factories producing services, software, if you will, the knowledge workers, how do I make sure that each and every employee can work? And that actually completely changed the meaning of a BCP. So that was, I think, the first rude shock for a lot of companies, because they were very ill prepared for what that meant. And the examples galore, right? I take one example, a call center industry. If you take, behind one desktop are probably 2 or 3 agents who come in shifts. So the same desktop is used by one agent from 12 to 8, second agent from 8 to 4, and the third from 4 to 12. Now, when they couldn't come to office, that desktop was actually inadequate, because you had to now provide for 3 instead of 1. Nobody thought about having PCs or desktops in the ratio of the employees. You always had that 1:3, 1:2.5 ratio. So these are examples of how inadequate one was prepared. And I think the blessing has been technology. The companies that have adopted technology faster have actually not only crossed over or the hump that the COVID kind of gave us, but also took it to their advantage to truly make it a seamless, borderless, BCP secure organization. And I think there's some great examples of how companies have been able to immediately use technology to tide over this humongous issue. I'll give you our example in Jio. We employed 6,000 employees who handle 450 million mobile customers of ours, right? So, and like everyone else, they were going to few areas or locations, if you will, call center operation locations. And we overnight moved these 6,000 employees to their homes. We moved that call center operation home without even 1 day blip of service. And that was only possible through technology. So I think technology clearly has been the differentiator between those companies who have done well in this 2 years of pandemic and those companies who have in fact struggled. Another data point that Gajendra, I don't know whether you're aware, but before the pandemic started, the estimate was that there are 75 million businesses in this country. Anybody performing a commercial activity, any company, corporate, and it included gig workers as well. That 75 million businesses shrunk to 65 million post-COVID. So you've seen 10 million businesses shutting shop. And the businesses that have done well were the businesses that adopted technology faster, quicker than the businesses who actually did not. So the technology has been a great enabler for this new normal.
Absolutely, Prateek. And I think we have come to the core point of, I think, this discussion where your views will be absolutely valuable. This entire shift has happened probably at a time when technology was just about ripe, I would say, to cater to this requirement. Like Jio itself, its 4G networks were widely used around the year 2020. There was a proliferation of people using 4G technology. Fiber was getting rolled out. So my question is, do you think luckily or unluckily, this happened at a time when we were just ready with the right kind of broadband services, connectivity, smartphone devices, and other applications that came together with video calling? You are at the enterprise level, and I think it will be great to hear what you think of all these different elements that came together.
Gajendra, you ask a very interesting question. If this pandemic had happened a decade before, I'm not sure we would have ridden this that well. I think, as you said, it was a great combination of technologies, ubiquitous broadband, 4G broadband, covering pretty much all villages and towns and cities that Jio enabled from 2016 onward. So transformation of networks to ubiquitous 4G connectivity, deep fiber presence, again by operators, but again led by Jio, availability of smartphones. So I think it was a perfect combination, which enabled us to kind of ride this horrible, what should I say, event in our lives much better. And I dread to imagine how it would have been if these enablers were not in place, and if it had happened truly about 5 to 10 years back. So absolutely.
Sure. So that is from the user's perspective. What about from the operator's perspective? What did it do to you did that expedite your rollouts and reach outs? How did that impact you as an enterprise?
See, I think, and I'll talk about the shift that's happening, whether you call it the reverse migration, you call it the enterprise hotspots, right? The enterprise hotspots were always known to be a Nehru Place or a DLF Cyber Hub in Delhi, or a Nariman Point or a BKC. And that's where the enterprises or the enterprise service providers concentrated on in terms of taking their networks, taking in terms of their support staff, sales organizations. Those hotspots are no longer hotspots. Those hotspots have shifted. So it's not Nehru Place, but it's GK2 in Delhi. It's not BKC, but it's Bandra. And this is where somebody like us, who's not only had an enterprise strategy, but a home strategy, where we are kind of rolling out ubiquitous broadband in every nook and corner of the country, and starting with 1,600 towns. So those providers who had a very, very coherent home strategy of reaching fiber to home actually have been beneficial, because truly those centers or those enterprise hotspots are no longer pumping traffic. The traffic is actually originating from home. And even when we go back to a hybrid way of working, the hotspots will come back to the enterprise clusters, but they will significantly remain in residential clusters as well. And I think strategy like ours is saying we are going to do a ubiquitous coverage, and that's what is one of my key elements of, I think, what would be required and what is needed in the new normal is a ubiquitous connectivity. And this shift of hotspot from enterprise clusters to the residential clusters has also meant that all the rules, norms, security, privacy, all of those have now become important, not for the 10 offices that a company worked in, but probably the 2,000 residential homes of their employees, because that's where the data is getting transacted. And how do you ensure now a network or a connectivity or services, applications that an enterprise needs over these 2,000 office premises? Each home is now an office premise. And we are having very interesting conversations with our customers. Earlier, the conversations with their enterprises was about SLA, uptime, redundancy, but was for those office locations, right? Today, the enterprises have started saying, can you give me SLA on my employee's home connection? Can you give me a redundant connectivity, one fiber, one 4G? Those conversations you wouldn't have imagined this happening just probably 2-3 years back. But because the demand, the origin of traffic is now the residential cluster, these conversations have become very relevant. Earlier, people talked of software-defined network, software-defined WAN. And again, that was limited to those 20 offices and 50 offices that a company have. People are talking of saying, can I have the software-defined networks and services extended to even my home or my employee's home? So it's completely going to transform the CIO conversations that they were engaging in. It's also going to lead to not just hybrid way of working, but hybrid networks as well. And I think that's it augurs well for the enterprises, because earlier the enterprises were spending far higher money in creating what you call as VPN networks. Now, with this shift, what are you going to say? You basically want to say, bring your own internet. I will put the security protocols. I will put the traffic prioritization protocols on top of that. And it doesn't matter. In some locations, it's a fiber connectivity. In some locations, 4G. In some locations, it's a home connection. But all of these get federated through one unified security layer, one unified prioritization layer that gets managed by the enterprise. And I think that is a joy for any CIO or any CEO, because you're no longer tethered to that one service provider only. He truly becomes the king. It doesn't matter now connectivity. Connectivity can come from any source. I can apply that layer of control. And that's going to be one big shift.
Absolutely. And so one core point in this, Prateek, in this wonderful explanation that you have shared is it is basically depicting a distributed enterprise is what it's like you are part of the enterprise team selling connectivity to enterprises and applications, but now it's actually reaching the end user from his home or her home. What have you seen in terms of the technology expertise or requirements of the end user, which may have come up? You see, for example, where I'm coming from is, say, when I go to an office and sit down for the entire day, I have a problem with my email, or my laptop crashes, or I have a problem. I have an entire team. I have the network team. I have somebody to support me. I'm sure these kind of issues may have come up with a lot of employees, especially for large employees like yourself. How has this been, and what are some interesting highlights of these? Would you be able to share?
And I think you bring another very important aspect of what's going to happen. It's the journey had started, but I think it's got clearly accelerated with the pandemic, and that's everything moving as a service. I don't want just a laptop. I want the support as well. I don't want just some software. I want it to be managed and supported. And I think everything as a service, you will clearly see that movement happening. Because as you rightly said, how do I provide that technology support? In one premise, I could have two people, cyber butlers, if you call them or whatever, who could kind of tend to this. But how do you provide remote infrastructure management? And I think we've seen that in the last 2 years, the shift to say, can you manage it also for me? Don't just be a supplier, just manage the whole thing. So that I could focus on my core business. I'm in the core business of banking. I'm in the core business of textile manufacturing. Can you bring all of these together as service? And clearly, one other problem that CIO always worries about is technology obsolescence. Making upfront capex and not knowing whether that's the right bet, or should have bet on something else. And I think everything as a service answers that, solves for that problem, because somebody else is taking the ownership of saying you will get the best of breed technologies, always current and always supported, rather than doing one time upfront decision, which can be very costly and painful. So that is fundamentally the shift that you're saying of device as a service, connectivity as a service, infra as a service. And I think you are going to see the models emerging, which are pretty much transferring or moving from capex-led decisions to OPEX-led decisions, everything becoming a service that you can call for.
So that brings me, Prateek, to one of the softer sides of this distributed enterprises of tomorrow that we're talking about. And there are two aspects to it. You can touch upon both in your own way. One is, working from home has actually been a boon for many, many employees. People have gone back to their homes. They don't need to commute for 3 to 4 hours in a day. That problem of the large, traffic and everything is all gone. You yourself are a sports enthusiast. How has it impacted people like you and others? How do you think this impacts you to focus more on a little bit on yourself, spend more time with your family, or what has been your observation on this?
Sure. And before I come to my own observation, I think what I would like to talk about is this work from anywhere has actually opened up avenues for people who hitherto were not in the universe of workforce. I'll give you examples. There are graduate and postgraduate moms who are not able to step out of their house because they have got young kids, but they have time. They have 4 hours to spare. They don't have 8 hours to spare because the kid comes back from school. This has led to that lady who's a postgraduate or a graduate experience, who's left the workforce, to say, I can give 4 hours. Use me. Use my capability and my skills. And that has completely democratized and actually made it far more inclusive, the workforce. So you're no longer saying, boss, I need somebody who's coming 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. If I have talent, I have capability, and I'm saying you can take 25 hours of me in a week. There are millions of jobs which would say, oh, I would rather tap somebody who's experienced, who can devote 4 hours than 8 hours. So the contract between employee and employer is changing. It's no longer one monolithic, rigid contract. And I'm not saying this in theory. We've deployed about 20,000 such hitherto not in the mainstream workforce, mostly ladies, NGO, who have kind of come back, who have come forward and said, I can give 5 hours, or I can do 3 days. And we've used them for, first trained them through digital technologies, trained them about our products, our services. And they've been managing a customer relationship for those 4 hours, for doing a damn good job of it. And think of it, I mean, we could find 20,000 talented people just like that. And it didn't matter whether you were in Bombay or Bhopal. Because if you had connectivity and you had skills, so talent is truly going to be the king going forward. It's no longer about how much effort or 8 hours I'm putting in. If I can give you outcomes, that's the next measurement that's happening. And it's increasing the workforce pool multiple times. And if you're open, this is a challenge to the HR, CHROs of the companies, saying you have to start thinking about flexible models. But truly, just imagine, would you take a 20-year-old person who's not very experienced versus somebody who's very experienced but can give only 3 hours a day and has had 10 years of experience behind her? You would tend to go for saying somebody with the same who brings in experience. I would rather put them in front of my customer, right? So I think it's unleashed new workforce, and we could truly get to diversity of the workforce, and hope to get to 50-50 in workforce in terms of men, women. And it's not just men, women, it's of various backgrounds, but technology enables them to kind of be included. On the work from home front, I think it's a interesting conundrum for everyone. Clearly, you see productivity going up. Also, especially the big town hassles of commute, spending 2 to 3 to 4 hours a day taking care of the family as well. It's that much more easier to work from home. So, I think in pandemic, people have put those 2.5, 3 hours, maybe out of 3 hours of commute, they put back 2 hours at work. So from an organization perspective, they've been available more, right? They put an hour into their families for themselves. And I think this is one good byproduct of the pandemic. People have become more conscious about me time, family time, health. And I think so there are clearly, especially in the big towns, where the commute is 3 to 4 hours, the work from home helps. But I think as one CEO of a Philippine company was talking to, we were in a panel and she was talking about saying, yes, you won deals remotely, especially in a B2B environment. Yes, you can win contracts and transactions. What about relationship? Relationships can't be built remotely. I think that face-to-face interaction is equally important. So yes, business can happen, but I think relationship with customers, you still need to meet them. You may not meet them that often as you did earlier, because customers have also got used to conversing and talking and discussing or a video conference. The second is, I think, the sense of belongingness to the organization. Whether it's the institution, the premise, the office, the canteen, the conversations while waiting in queue in the canteen, while spending just that 2 minutes with the colleague on his desk or her desk, I think that is equally important. So you have to create, when you have to collaborate, when you have to do blue sky thinking, when you want to kind of brainstorm, I think a face-to-face is a lot better than the digital tools that exist. And yes, you can do that as well. But I think it's going to be a hybrid. Work from home has huge benefits for both organization as well as employee. So it would be the hybrid norm. As regards me, yes, I am one of those big city person who stays very far from the office. So I've claimed 3.5 hours of commute back. And I think of that, 2.5 hours have gone back into work. And an hour has gone into cycling. So I think that truly has multiple benefits, both in terms of productivity and any sport, as people say, endorphins and dopamine are your feel-good hormones. And sport, early part of the day, if you do that, it makes sure that your rest of the day is very happy and healthy. So I think I'm what should I say, first-hand experienced person. The days I haven't got a ride, I tend to be more cranky than the days I've got a ride under my belt. So.
That's a message for your juniors, I guess, to understand. Yeah. But so Prateek, coming to the very last quick query from you, you yourself are part of a large enterprise, but you are also providing tools and platforms and solutions to your customers who are also large enterprises, probably. What in your view are the tools and services that will dominate in the future for this kind of a hybrid enterprise of tomorrow?
Yeah, and while you asked me a question about large enterprise, I think this is technology is a great catalyst for reducing the hurdles that the small medium businesses faced earlier. It truly gives them a plank to compete with the large enterprises. So for us, it's not just the large enterprise who have the wherewithal, have probably a 50 people IT department, but it also gives a huge advantage to that proprietor run, founder run small business, because these technologies truly enable them to say, I will focus on my business, but I have tools that help me drive productivity. tools that help me connect with my customers better, tools that drive efficiency of operations. So, and just as an example, what does any organization need? You need productivity tools. You need marketing tools to reach your customer, connect with your customers better. You need, because for customers, you need a CRM of sort to kind of keep customer records data. You need accounting to kind of keep track of your financials, and you need a HR. And I'm saying you start from the smallest organization to the biggest organizations. You can start using words like ERP and so on. But at the core, these are you manage your operations, you manage your HR, you drive productivity tools for your employees, connect with your customers. And if you can bring these solutions to the company in a everything as a service manner and say, I have thought about it so that you don't have to worry about it. And if you can be that glue who brings together all these services in a bite-sized manner to a small, medium business, it could be a salon, it could be a small web development company, it could be a real estate broking firm. If you take those solutions to them, that divide of the digital haves and the digital have-nots would significantly get reduced. And we've seen that companies that have adopted digital tools, especially in the small, medium businesses, have actually grown multifold, even during the pandemic. So I think the emergence of everything as a service, software as a service, clearly cloud, clearly that is the the momentum that the pandemic has given to all these technologies, the mushrooming of various software as a service players. I think it augurs well for the industry, not just for the large enterprise, but for the small, medium business as well. And we at Jio are truly trying to kind of do that, to say, can I be that digital enabler? And see, these are cliched words. But truly, if you can go to the founder and say, I understand your business of pharmacy, or I understand your business of a coaching center, and here is what you need as a coaching center. Here is what you struggle with because you don't have a huge IT team to support you. Let me solve that for you. And if I can give it to you at costs which are easy to manage, give you latest technology so that you move up the curve, you're never left behind, I think you will see huge adoption of these digital tools. And very clearly, adoption of digital tools and growth of a company there's a huge direct correlation between the two. So I think when our country is expected to move from 3 trillion economy to a 5 trillion economy, you're going to see these digital tools playing a very important role in making that happen. To give you one example to kind of just make my point, China, 65% of its GDP comes from SMB, small, medium business. UK, US, Europe, Western Europe, 50% of the 50% of the GDP comes from SMB. In India, it's 33%. And we believe that difference of truly SMBs contributing to the GDP of the country, it's not the capital constraint, it's the resource constraint or the technology constraint. And if you can solve for that, it would be very soon that this 33% SMB contribution becomes 50% contribution to the country's GDP.
Absolutely, Prateek. So absolutely wonderful insights into this. I think we are at the threshold of the future of enterprises. And from what you said, we look forward to a hybrid model. That brings us actually to the end of this session. Prateek, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and looking forward to more such sessions with you.
Absolutely, Gajendra. And next time we will do it in person, face to face.
Absolutely.
And thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, gentlemen, for such great insights and such a great conversation.